Welcome,
Hello.
everybody, into the Veil. My name is Swiper, and this is episode 2, Resurrecting the Devout and You. Joining me today is Zalen, Malice, and Bobo. What is going on, guys?
Hey, guys.
Hey,
How's it going?
Bobo, the dual-colored eyes there, my friend.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You look like you got punched in the eye.
It's like a black eye.
Corona is
almost.
creeping up on you.
There you
Yeah,
go.
exactly. Getting coronavirus more and more. So
So all joking aside, I hope everybody is well, everybody is good. We're here today to talk about a couple things at the Devout class and how Resurrection will work as a spell or an ability. But recently, guys, I have to say this. We got some kick-ass news last week. We found out that the Spirit Mage and the Scout are going to be official.
Oh,
this
that
is
was
pretty
great.
freaking sweet, right?
That was
Yeah, baby.
awesome. This stuff isn't coming out in a later patch, or what do they call it?
Extender pack.
An extender
no
pack, whatever.
longer extender packs. So we shall be seeing this for launch, and we'll probably be getting more information on this in the near future. So what I did want to talk about today was the Devout class and how they are actually going to be doing a reveal stream for this archetype fairly soon. So I thought it'd be a good idea that we all talk about it, considering it's going to be the only hybrid class that is out there for now. So if you guys remember, the Devout was introduced to us back in 2015, believe it or not. And they gave us small hints about it, but not a whole lot of information. So this reveal stream coming up is going to be huge. So I know a lot of you guys have played Dark Age of Camelot, maybe Warhammer, and some other MMORPGs. I first wanted to kind of take a step back and ask you guys, and including chat, what kind of experiences you've had, whether playing a hybrid class or being in a party that had to decide on picking a hybrid class. So usually, like, my experience, a lot of it was in Warhammer. So I played a shaman, which was technically a hybrid class in that game, and I absolutely loved it. I got to balance healing and damage, and it was probably like my top 3 favorite classes of all time. So what I want to do is kick it off to you guys and kind of get your feel for what classes you guys played or what classes you've partied with and some of your experiences with it.
Oh gosh.
Well, hybrid classes for me, pretty traditionally, have proven to be the weakest classes. They're a jack of all trades. They're a master of none. Which doesn't mean that a hybrid class can't be successful, but even when you tried to do it in a game like Arcage, where like it's supposed to be mix and match any abilities you want, if you truly broke that mold and went hybrid, like being a paladin or something like that, it was never a good healer, and it was never a good character in combat. I would say Warhammer is the only game that I've really played where the hybrid-esque classes were actually, in some ways, more powerful. Because you had, like, the Warrior Priest was not their main healer. Their main healer was the Rune Priest. But those Warrior Priests were just nightmarish because they wouldn't die. They wouldn't let their friends die, and they just kept beating on you and splashing heals, and that was really powerful. Same with the chaos version of that, but 9 times out of 10, I find that hybrids are the weaker class. Like even in like Dark Age, when you had like the Valkyrie and things like that, the Valkyrie was trying to be so many things and really just sucked at all of them.
I think how the developers do a lot of the game build, or they do a lot of the meta builds for the different classes, the less control that you have as a player as far as all the different things that you can choose to do with your character, the worse those classes are, because the game is actively trying to make it a true hybrid. Whereas if you look at like the early days of most of these games, you have the ability to, I mean, look at World of Warcraft just as an example. you could literally put points into all these weird things. The idea of a meta spec back then, I mean, it was kind of there, but so many different things that you could do. You could truly make a class be this thing and it could do it really well, or it could be this thing and do it really well. Fast forward to where it was literally, okay, every 12 levels you get to select one of three things. Your classes became junk at that point. You became just a cookie cutter of whatever it was that the game was like, here you go. People are complaining the other's too complicated. No, complexity actually helps a lot of these hybrid classes. Look back at Dark Age of Camelot to, I'm going to call the Friar a hybrid class, because you were able to be a healer, you were able to be a damage dealer. If you tried to do both, you weren't very good at either. If you went hardcore down the healing line, you could heal just as well as any cleric. If you went hardcore down the DPS line, you were one of the strongest DPS classes there with those staves. But you had to really, truly commit to it. If you try to do everything and truly be that hybrid, I just don't think that developers have figured out a way to make those viable. Because, and again, my opinion, if you could be viable while doing everything, if you did try to spec down one line specifically, you'd be so overpowered it would be ridiculous. So I'm curious to see how Camelot is going to deal with the hybrid classes in this respect. I'm hoping that they have actually made it something that's useful and is doable.
Also, from my point of view, what helps to have a good hybrid class, and also usually to play it well, because it's not always a question of only skills, but I think where the hybrid classes can shine will be more like in some specific situation rather than being good all the time. They can shine in rather specific situation. I'm thinking like maybe on with the Thane that we had on the Dark Age of Camelot on the Viking side. It could do pretty well in certain situation if it was also like well built, and also the fact that it had there wasn't that many options to build your character in Dark Age, a few but not that much, so you basically had to also spec it the way that would suit your gameplay also, because I know that there was some pretty decent things that could do better than warriors in fact on certain specific situations. And also from they also hybrid classes also have to offer something that other classes don't do, to even if it's like I said, for more specific situation, if they can do something else that the other class won't do, they can still be pretty useful. I'm just thinking also like the frigs that it's a healing over time from the shaman in Dark Age. A strong heal over time could be pretty awesome in certain situations, better than heals mostly, if you knew how to do it well.
Yeah. No, that's good. No, keep going. Sorry, but what I mean.
Oh, that's okay. I was done at the moment. It's okay.
So I'm looking at chat here, and I have a little bit of experience with Final Fantasy XI. Now I know that was strictly kind of a PvE game, but I think personally, when you're talking balance and you're only focused on PvE, I think it's a little bit easier to maybe differentiate a lot of classes and make them how can I say, like, maybe not the balance isn't as hard as I feel like when you do PvP, in my opinion, because when you mix PvE and PvP and you start trying to balance things, and that's I think why it's difficult to make a hybrid in a PvP game, because of balance and things like that. But overall, I think that I kind of agree with you, Bobo. I kind of agree with all of you, but Bobo makes a good point where it's all about the situation at hand. Yep. And when you look at some of these classes that Camelot Unchained is going to present to us,
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Wolf, that's awesome. I'm so sorry, Swiper.
No, it's cool.
If a monk tried his hand in philosophy while cooking chicken, then he would be a deep fryer. Sorry.
No, you're good, man. So I'm looking at some of these devout classes, and they have some really cool mechanics. Kind of like what I loved in Warhammer was a lot of these classes had a certain mechanic that you kind of had to perform or do to basically be good at your class. So when you look at like the abbot from the Arthurian, I mean, this guy essentially is drinking beer and gaining movement from this and enhancing his abilities. He's got a little bit of melee, a little bit of range, but his main job, it looks like he is buffing. So he's buffing a lot of his allies. And what'd you say?
Is to sit on people.
It's just, and it's like the closer everybody is to this guy, and he can stack his buffs, the stronger he's going to make everybody. So it gives you that kind of play style where, you know, you want to kind of fill a role, fill a specific purpose, and kind of enhance everybody around you. And depending on how they do buffs with the other classes, say like the speed classes, you know, the support classes and the healers, this could be something very powerful if buffs are, in my opinion, not spread around that everybody has a buff, like in some MMOs that we play.
I love, and not to get too far off topic, but I love the way that Dark Age of Camelot did buffs in the early days, where you had like a pool of concentration that you could use to put a buff on a person. So, you know, you had your RVR raids, you literally had a crap ton of buff clerics sitting in a keep, you know, your central whatever place. Everybody goes, they get buffed by all these bots that people just have running on computers because that's what you needed to get everybody buffed. And then you'd run out and they wouldn't die. So the buffs, you know, it just, that kind of thing was awesome, as opposed to, you know, here, buffs for everybody. Woo! You know, come on, guys.
But we do agree that buff bots should not be back anymore. I'd rather have everyone on a regular level, but the same level, rather than having buff bots where everyone is just so buffed all the time. And the only way to compete would have to own a buff bot also.
Yeah, I do remember a buddy of mine had two accounts. One account was the buff bot, and the other account was what he would actually play with us. And there are points where they're like, well, we should play again. And my buddy's like, I'm not paying 2 fees just to play this game anymore. He's like, I'm not doing it. So I hope I like the buffing. I just hope they don't kind of go in that direction where it's that class that just can sit there.
I think MJ mentioned it quite often that it's something that won't happen again. It's not something that he wants.
I'm really hoping that the hybrid classes in general don't turn into these buff type bots. And this is probably one of those weird negative things that I'll actually say about Camelot, because usually I'm countering this guy over here who's the wet blanket.
I'm only sunshine and rainbows. I only give people the most rainbowish
fine
stuff.
Sunshine and rainbows printed pattern on a wet blanket. Okay. The hybrid classes, honestly, what's the point? If you want to be a healer, go play a healer. You want to be a DPS, go play DPS. I don't think hybrid classes should be phenomenal DPS. I don't think they should be phenomenal healers, because at that point, why play these other classes? Or why not just make every class a hybrid class? Like, they're...
Well, the one nice thing in the devout category in specific is that it is a healer support type character, depending on like which one you're looking at. And because of that, they are your off healer. They are the person who is throwing spot heals while the main healer is throwing the big heals, or they're throwing a heal over times, or they're doing buff support while the healer is actually focusing on.
Okay, but if healing. I'm planning a raid on a keep, why wouldn't I bring in 4 or 5 of the main healer class, which can very easily and better take care of all those roles? Why would I want to take a subpar class?
Buffs. You give them specific buffs, or
then they're buff
it's the same. Well, it's the same. No, it's not buff bot. I mean, a buff bot's only a buff bot if you break buffs and make them remote things that don't
Yeah.
travel with you and that don't have quick cooldowns.
Well, no,
mean,
the
and-
Paladin in World of Warcraft for the whole first year, I mean, you had them in raids simply because they were a buff bot. They had to travel with you. They had to come with you.
Well, I
But you
think
also
there-
have to keep in mind that an hybrid class can be a bit less useful in a certain situation, but they can be more useful in other situations. But on average, they can do more things. So it's not bad to actually have some hybrid classes, because at some point, let's say you're in a fight that you don't need that much heal, but you need like more DPS power or tanking power or defending power. So the hybrid class can do more things. It's
I
not
will
stuck
say-
to one function.
I will say, if these devout classes turn out like what the monk was supposed to be in World of Warcraft, where they were a damage dealer and dealing damage was a substantial enough healing that you could, as Malice said previously, be the off healer to provide some of that off healing for the DPS that just run around. If they can figure something out like that, to me that is a good use of a hybrid class, because you're providing enough DPS that you're still making a difference, because everybody nowadays wants healers to also DPS. No, they're there to heal. A different rant. But when it comes to
it's true.
clarity.
It's so true what you just said, man. I
But
agree.
when it comes to the hybrid function, make those the classes that do the DPS and the healing, but make those two things have to work together. And maybe it's a heal that you cast that also damages everything that's within range, and that's just how it works or something.
See, but like I'm gonna reflect to World of Warcraft.
He just threw up in his mouth a little bit there.
No. There's no rants. No. That the you had basically 4 major types of healer, but some of them were hybrid. So your paladin, even in classic WoW, poor paladin. As soon as he became, he's like, I hit max level. They're like, here's your cloth gear. Put your sword away.
Here's your dress.
You're now a healer. Here's your dress. Yeah. And you're gonna throw some heals, but mostly you're just gonna throw cleanse. That's your job. You're gonna cleanse.
And bubbles so that we don't
Yes.
fully wipe on the. Yeah, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Basically, they were cleanse bots.
Yeah.
But your druids were your heal over times. They were not your main tank healers, but they were throwing heals on your non-main tanks because they weren't getting spike damaged. Your actual healers, your priests, or who were the guys who were throwing the big heals on repeat on your tank. They were the huge spike healers. And then you had the buff priests who are sitting there putting bubbles on everything. And so there is a role in a combat for all kinds of healing, and you don't need to put all that healing in one basket. You don't have to say the healer has access to all of the buffs, all of the big heals, all of the hots, all of that. You could spread that among your hybrid classes, because that's really what a druid was a hybrid class. It had options to do everything. Eventually it just became the best at everything. We won't go to that. But that's, again, another whole dark path we can wander. But the point is, from at least a healing standpoint, them being a heal over time class didn't make them the fantastic healer, but they were good in PvP, because as long as you were smart in PvP and you weren't the guy trying to wade through everybody's damage, like you were using your own blinks and ice blocks and everything like that, and those hots were just making that difference.
But again, this goes back to what I stated earlier. This is hybrid classes that had the ability to have a crap ton of options. And then as the game progressed along, those classes became shit as far as the hybrid function, and they became the druid that could do everything. You could take a fucking group of... Sorry, I'm not going to get going on that. You could take a group of shaman and have a full... some of the best DPS, some of the best healers.
But that's kind of why I was sticking with vanilla, was like in that vanilla framework when they weren't the uber power druid and the uber power paladin, they were still valued and they still had value, and they were required to show up for raids.
Yeah. Bobo, man. I know
Sorry,
you were
Bobo.
trying to say
Yeah,
something.
sorry,
Go for it,
sorry.
Bobo.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. There's also a different point, different reason that why people would like to play hybrid classes. Because some people like to heal, but they don't just want to heal. They like to do something else also. So it's sometimes it's better to have a half healer than no healer at all. So
Right.
at one point, it can satisfy like more players. And also from another perspective, if you think the way that MJ presents most of his classes, like you have options, you can either do this or that. You can, the more you do something, the better you're at. It could also be applied to the hybrid classes. So let's say you have an hybrid class that it's half melee and half healer. So at, he starts the combat and he starts a battle, and he's mostly healing at first. So the more he heals, the better he is at healing right during this battle. As soon as he starts healing less and fight more, then his healing powers reduces and his melee abilities starts raising. So it could be the same for an hybrid class that offer healing
So a
and
hellbound.
DPS. Yeah, but I mean,
That's very much a hellbound
the
is.
more, but the more
Go hellbound.
the more you do something, the better he is. So it's not like he could also basically be a pure melee in some battles, but in some other battles he could choose to be pure healer. Well, not pure, but mainly heals.
I think a comment here that Johnny Clash is making, a good game will utilize different party makeups for different objectives. I'm going to go further on that and say that a good group or good guild is going to utilize the different classes to how they were built to do. If you do not have a good community of people that you're running with, the whole idea of a hybrid, I truly think just kind of goes in the shit can. It's completely and utterly useless because they just want to barrel down and pound as many of the, really, really good classes in there, because in their mind, the Zerg with a bunch of 100%ers is going to be better than, taking time to learn mechanics and do things the proper way, which probably takes longer, but is going to utilize every single class. And everybody is going to be able to play what they want to play.
Yeah, and like earlier you mentioned the example on the Siege Keep. Well, in fact, in the Siege Keep, a pure healer would be better. But in an 8 versus 8, where people always fight in each other and you're always confronted to someone, then half tank, half healer could basically be better because he has more survivability during.
Because your healer's busy kiting around with like 4 dudes trying to kill him, and he's like, ah! And the half healer's like, all right, just stay up.
You won't be able to kite that much as soon as you cast. You won't be able to cast and move at the same time. So that's another aspect that you have to consider.
And Wolf, to your comment there, enrage timers is a poor excuse for DPS to be lazy. If your healer has to fucking DPS on a boss just to get the damn thing down, you need to kick all your DPS out because they're absolute crap.
Oh, shit.
Well, the main reason why that they allow that there's this idea, and it has become a generational idea of DPSing off of your healers, is because, great, there are people who are purists like Zaylin who want to be the purest of pure, snow white, wonderful healers and have no other buttons on their bar. 80% of the healers do not agree with you.
Fucking heal buttons, dude, to pull all that shit together. Fine, give them all to me. Make the healing class complex. I don't want to fucking DPS or do that shit while I'm healing.
But you're a minority.
Yes, I know.
These hybrid healers in particular exist just to get some friggin' healers in your group, because you can't get healers in your group. They're the hardest class in any game to find, is to get committed healers who are good. That's the other thing. Ooh, it's amazing how many people play certain games that have been playing healers for years, and you're like, and I started yesterday and I'm a better healer than you, and I normally play tanks. Okay. Yeah.
Well, we were talking about WoW, and one of the things that they did, I don't know when they did it, but I'm actually playing like a discipline priest, and
Yep. Disc
I
priests.
find it really interesting because when you're shielding people, like putting shields on them, and you have your whatever that thing is, like the power ward up, and you're damaging people, they're actually getting a percentage of the damage, and they're getting healed for that. So you have to kind of make a decision: can I heal? Do I need to heal them, or can I put a shield on them and damage them to keep them up? And that's exactly why I love hybrids, is because you have to make a decision on the fly for the most part. And it's not just simple, I'm going to DPS and that's all I'm doing. And I'm going to heal and that's all I'm doing. I mean, I prefer healers, but when you give me some complexity and you give me something I need to do and do it well, and it makes my character better, like a better asset, that's when I feel like hybrid classes can really
shine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree on that point, because I think the better you're at a game, the more ready you are to play an hybrid class, because you need to not necessarily master, but know the game pretty well to be able to switch back and forth during your very different abilities.
I'm cautious about Camelot Unchained's hybrid class, specifically Devout. It seems like more of a niche class where, okay, if you're going to play Albion, great. I want to have a character that drinks beer and does all this stuff with beer. Go to another realm, I want to have a class that does whatever the niche thing is there for that, class. What is it that the hybrid actually does differently? It just seems like they're putting in these hybrid classes just to have that niche character of more of a roleplay sense, which in a PvP game, it just feels weird.
I'm not sure, because even from we know they like the Devouts, they're going to be hybrid, but let's say the Viking Devout could be half melee, half healer. The hybrid from TDD could be half healer, half caster. So we don't know exactly how those hybrids going to be different, because we know they won't be mirror classes.
No, I think if you look at them, the Albion one is a healer melee, the Viking one is healer ranged, and then the TDD is healer magic. With the
and if you look at the TDD, right, they're gonna have like a bunch of deployables, right, and they call them cauldrons. So I'm not sure how to describe this. You know how like a shaman,
they're a totem class.
Come drink my pot.
Yeah.
Yep, they're totem
so
class.
You're going to be putting objects in the battlefield, and then you can manipulate those objects to do whatever they're going to allow you to do, whether they're buffs or heals or damage. So you kind of have to set up your battlefield with this class and think about where you're going to put everything, And go ahead. Sorry.
Trev is yelling at us because we keep saying Albion instead of Arthurian.
Oh, Arthurian. They go hand in hand. Come on. And like the Hellbound, they're going to have a life or death stance. So obviously your life is going to be your healing stance, and death is going to be your damage stance. And from my understanding is when you switch stances, it's going to make what you switch weaker at first, and then it'll start to get normal. So I think all three hybrids are going to be very different when it comes to your play style.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if the death stance is going to be just lay on the ground and play dead.
It's not a stance then. Wolf is asking if Camelot Unchained is action-based or skill-based combat.
It's kind of a mix of both, right? So they're gonna it's gonna be tab target, but they're gonna have targeted abilities that you'll have to aim.
Oh, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be mostly tab target, but there are gonna be abilities where you'll have to aim. Not as much as Guild Wars, I don't think, but obviously this is me just.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it in the category of action combat.
No.
You're not double tap rolling evades and physically using your shield to like block left, block right, things like that.
This isn't New World combat.
Right. Yeah, and Zaylen and I say, it's a game where you're gonna have time to immerse yourself in the game and not just react to it. So
yeah. So when I look at all these classes, I am a purist for the Vikings, but when I truly look at these classes, I really do want to play Blessed Crow, because I just love the fact that you can throw these cauldrons all over the place and simply just say like, oh, I got to do something with that one, and then I'll save this one for the back line. And like, they don't have specifics, and that's what we'll learn more with when they start talking about these. But I think that is the most interesting mechanic out of all three of these.
And that mechanic, at least for the Blessed Crow, I think is one of those ones that's going to make that class. There's going to be a lot of cry out about that class, because what you're doing is you're putting that class in a situation where he has to rely upon the intelligence and the activity of the people in his group. Because if you've got a bunch of cauldrons laying around, then you're basically forcing everyone in your group to be smart enough to go out and click the stupid cauldron, or to run to it, or do whatever it is that the interaction needs to be with that cauldron to heal you, give you a damage buff, whatever the heck it is. If you have people that don't do that, like in a Zerg, that class becomes useless. You're throwing out all these cauldrons, nothing's happening. They're not being utilized. It would be far better in that situation to just have a healer or somebody that can throw out these big boons and go, okay, you've got more damage going. Go. And, back to what we were talking about earlier, it comes down to, is the group you're running with an intelligent bunch of players? Are they going to utilize the different classes for the way that they're made? If not, that class becomes useless.
Well, so this is... sorry, go ahead, Bo.
No, just a quick thing. Swipper, if you're not good as a Blessed Crow with all your cauldrons and all, just because recycle yourself as a cook in the game. You can
No! Bringing up the dad jokes, huh?
So I'm gonna put this out there in specific, moving away from the generic of the idea of hybrids to the tradition with MJ, and how hybrids aren't as hybrid as you think they are. If you look at Dark Age of Camelot, if you look at Warhammer, I'll use the destruction healers in Warhammer. Technically, all of the healers were hybrids. You could honestly say probably the shaman was the closest thing to an actual full healer. The zealot was constantly swapping between zapping people to gain boosts to his heals, to then throw his heals, which would boost his damage. Then he'd zap people so that he could boost his healing. Mm-hmm. And you had the what was the melee dark elf class?
I know it's I know they had the dual blades,
right? But they were a melee healer.
Yes,
but all of them in concert, because
Discipline of Cain. Yes,
Discipline of Cain. Yes.
Thank you, Narth.
Funny because I played one. It was my secondary class. Yeah. But anyway, the end thing is that he has always tried to make a bunch of unique classes that stand on their own, not so much that they are. So I'll use this as an example. The Vikings. The Viking tank is going to be less tanky and is going to be more half damage, half tank. So you're going to have other classes that are going to be kind of half this, half that are going to help assist in fulfilling that role to make the tank. Whereas maybe the Arthurians have a more classic, big shield tank, but it doesn't have as much synergy with another class. And you see that all the time in games that MJ has made, that he is all about class synergies and how those classes in that faction, because they're not mirrors, work with each other in that mesh. And I think that's kind of the important aspect that gets missed when you're thinking about the Devout as a hybrid. It's a specific role fulfilling a lack of a role that is being taken away that makes that other role unique. Yes. And I'm going to Macarena. Anyway.
So I recall in Dark Age, each realm had like a like you're discussing a strength. So one was better with magic, right? One was better with melee damage and things like that. So I assume they're kind of going to go down that path here in Camelot Unchained. But to your point, that it makes a lot of sense. With like the hybrid classes and like the role that they could fill. So
Yep. That's yeah, and I think that's they will just fill in lacking spaces elsewhere. And that's what they end up, in a way, it's what the druid originally did, or the, paladin originally did in vanilla, is it filled in skill sets that the priests just didn't have.
So out of
2 weeks that Malice dances the Macarena. I did it before.
I was trying to peg that. I don't remember you doing that.
Oh yeah.
Oh goodness. Purge that idea out of my brain.
It's getting there for always now.
So to kind of bring back the conversation to basically the hybrid, it sounds like you guys have kind of different viewpoints on how hybrids have worked in earlier games, and how you kind of want them to work maybe in Camelot Unchained. I think Bobo made a good point earlier that they need to fulfill they have to have something specific that nobody else does. And in my opinion, that is going to make them good. I guess my question, you guys, is, besides that, is there anything else that you can think of that would make a hybrid class, like if you had a party and you would say, I want that hybrid class, I want that every time I'm forming a party. Is there something that you could think of that would entice you to think that way?
Sure. I'll look at I'll roll the clock back to ancient times of Dark Age of Camelot. Look at, say, the Scald. The Scald was not the best melee. If you really wanted a tank or a melee, you picked a savage or you picked a warrior. But he brought songs. He had the shouts, so he could run speed song and gave everybody mobility.
Yep.
That is really useful. The Theurgist in Albion, the class brought haste. Literally, people would make haste bots out of them because like haste was so powerful, and they really didn't have other buffs. And I'm not saying they were useless class by any stretch of the imagination, but like that idea that, well, if you really wanted the boomer, you brought the mage, or the wizard. So why would we need a Theurgist? Well, haste.
Yeah.
So I felt that they always gave the offset class certain buffs that you just couldn't pass up. Speed songs, hastes, those types of things that were just massively incredible. The Kabbalist or the shaman or the anybody who had poison was, or disease. Sorry, it was disease.
It was poison also.
But the disease was the mass slow, basically. It just kept your enemies in control. It was a big AoE crowd control that they could apply to you. And it reduced healing. So it's like everybody had their niche trick.
Yeah.
And I feel, and everybody had a niche trick. And I think that's the same way you roll in any type of MJ game. And that's kind of where I was going with the my other comment was, it was not so much that the class is a hybrid. They just every class has their niche trick, and once you put them all together in a group and they stack up, all of a sudden all those niche tricks mesh and become really powerful.
Yeah, and there's also now that you mention it, Malice, it was funny how to see that the Scald would have like buffs. Well, mostly.
Thanks for the cheer.
Buffs, mostly defenses
Thanks
buffs or neutral buffs for group, but was also pretty good at mezzing or damaging single target. As the thing was basically the other way around. He was not as effective in combat as the warrior, but he had AoE damage also. So from one point of view, on the defensive side or offensive side, they would have to vary their gameplay either for solo or AoE target, multiple targets.
Mhm.
So it was pretty cool to see how they were better in certain situations.
Mm-hmm.
Malice, I agree with you 100% on the point that that is something that MJ does phenomenally well, is that he'll take a class and then he'll create a game where each class has the ability to shine. And if you enjoy playing that class for whatever little cool nifty thing, whether it's a cauldron or throwing rocks at people or, you know, pelting people with crows or, you know, whatever that thing may be, if that's how you enjoy playing the class, well, they've built the game in such a way that you can do that. You can have a lot of fun doing that, and it actually matters. And to your point earlier, MJ does a phenomenal job with that, and I really don't know a lot of other studios that do it that well. They get to the point where the encounter and the big bad and the blah, 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 blah means more than the little guy. And I just, that feeling of MJ going, okay, we're going to look at our players and we're going to make sure that they are immersed in their class. They are having fun with their class and they matter. And there is no class that is garbage or it gets to the point where it's like, okay, go park yourself at the keep. Because even a cleric back in Dark Age of Camelot that was parked at the keep, well, you still had the healing cleric that was out there doing its thing, and they still had buffs. So, you know, props to MJ on that, in that you do create classes and games that people can thoroughly enjoy the reason they chose to play those classes.
Yeah, and just think about the amount of work that it probably is, because he's not only making 10 classes, he's making basically like 30 classes.
And this is why we're in year 7.
So, I mean, it's an insane amount of work.
They somehow pulled it off in 3 years last time.
Well, one thing that I caught from their stream in 2015, because I had to rewatch it because it's been so long. Somebody actually asked, "What's the point of a hybrid?"
I mean, you've switched 2 careers, got married, had 4 kids. You know, I mean, a lot of things have changed.
Don't forget about the house.
Yeah.
So they
and you got coronavirus.
So the question was, what's the point of the hybrid healer? And Ben, basically, you know, he was sitting there with Mark, and he goes, "Well, a hybrid healer could be good in, let's say, a small offensive group. Instead of taking a primary healer that's dedicated to just healing, you have a class that can heal and also dish out some damage. So your whole group is focused really on offense and doing damage. And that's where maybe a hybrid could come into play." They also brought up the fact that there could be a balanced group where you do have a healer, but your hybrid is technically, you know, a secondary or off healer, however you want to say it. And I think, you know, Alice, you were saying that before. So to me, I think they're thinking about these things, and I think we're lucky that they created, obviously a lot of these guys worked on Dark Age of Camelot and things like that. So they have the background for this, and they've had years of saying, okay, like, what did we maybe do wrong with some of these classes, and what would we want to change? And I think we are lucky for that standpoint when it comes to hybrid classes and things like that.
Like, what's actually really a neat small man group for hybrids is you build a group around one uber glass cannon DPS. That's his job, is to explode everybody, especially if he has AoEs. Everyone else is a healer hybrid who they do damage to interrupt and annoy people, to force heals and splash heals to make sure the glass cannon never dies.
Freaking
and then
bombs.
Yeah, you know, but it works. It's an effective tactic. So yeah.
6-second mez. Enter the ice mage. Boom.
And also, there's one very subtle thing. I'm not even sure if it's a word in English, but it also, hybrid classes can also be good classes to balance a bit more the realms. because at one point you could realize that this round would need to be a bit more have to have a bit more melee power and a bit more healing, so you could compensate and create an hybrid class that could fill those two gaps.
Well,
And
I
you
mean,
can-
yeah, if you look back at Dark Age of Camelot, everybody knew that if you're going up against Albion, you put on piercing protection because that's what they did. If you're going up against, the Midgard race, it was all the slashing and stuff like that. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
We were big into axes and giant swords.
So Great Wolf, I see one of your comments. It's a heroism mechanic ? What do you mean by that exactly? And if you guys know what he's referencing,
So
just
heroism
go ahead.
is referencing the shaman in World of Warcraft that had that 8-minute thing that was like pop hero, and everybody would just get a massive speed, damage, healing. I mean, it basically increased all your stats for a short amount of time, and so that was
like
the time
Bloodlust?
that, yeah, heroism,
okay.
bloodlust. It was just Horde was bloodlust, alliance, heroism type of thing.
Interesting. Okay.
Something that
So-
so he says that's when you guys were talking about making that something that would make a hybrid class unique.
Yeah, unique. Yeah.
Malice brought up
Yeah.
haste. I'm curious.
I was
to
hasty
see,
about it.
Yeah, you were. You rushed out. Anyway, I'm curious to see, given all, as you guys have said, that all of the classes kind of have that niche, and in some ways all of these classes are all hybrid if we're going to look at all these other MMOs and what that is defined as. How many people are actually going to stick with this game because they don't expect the way that MJ puts characters together? But those of us that have played Dark Age of Camelot from back in the day, there's a reason that we're so tied to that game still. So many years later, that is still one of our most fondest memories of any game, is playing that game, because you get so attached. You're able to do whatever it is that you wanted to with your characters and have fun with it.
Yeah, I can honestly say when like you guys, a lot of you guys know, I played Guild Wars 1 and then I moved to WoW, and then I played Camelot or Dark Age of Camelot, and my experience playing that was I had two buddies that loved it, swore by it, right? And all they did was power level me. But just seeing some of the classes, like I think it was like a Necro on the Arthurian side that you would basically you would have like a pet, right? Or like the spirit, and your actual character couldn't take damage. Am I interpreting that right?
Right. You are a ghost piloting a skeleton that you were remote controlling in front of you.
Yep.
I mean, think about that. Like, that's insane.
Right.
Dude.
Like, what type of what? And it was just this weird, and it life tapped, but it like life tapped to it, not to you.
Yeah. All your actions would be going through your pet.
Right.
Basically. So I hated to fight against that class. It was annoying.
Who do I target?
Oh, man. It was annoying.
But like, those are the things that I really hope they bring into Camelot Unchained. Like, just crazy mechanics like that. Just like somebody like me that wasn't exposed to a lot of, I would say, like creativity with classes.
Yeah, look at the Slaughter Wolf. The Slaughter Wolf is all kinds of all over the place. It has spirit pets, but they're temporary spell effects, but he's a melee with an axe. Like, what's going on there? Like, what?
Yeah.
So I really want to play one. It's like I'm totally excited to play one just because I'm like, oh, this looks so weird. It's got to be cool. Like,
and it's coming out for launch, right?
But I don't want to play a scout.
You don't want to play scout?
I want to play a scout.
You want to play a
scout?
scout?
Yeah, play scout. Yes. What's the other one? There's another really weird class. Is it the Arisen?
The one with is
that's
that
a scout.
scout? That's a scout with the head that's missing.
Yeah, no, they're like on fire. They're like look emoliated. And their head's a skull. And
yeah, that's the one Bobo wants to.
Yeah, no, and they're like all the scouts are really weird. Like they're not like you would think a normal scout would be. I have a cloak and a bow and I sneak off. No, it's like they're really weird, like almost like Dark Age of Camelot Necro type functionality.
You got your Wisp class that's practically invisible during the day, but then becomes a beacon in the night.
Yeah.
Well, and if you guys read like the lore behind it, it explains like kind of how that class became. And they're like, the one story is pretty gruesome. Like, it's pretty freaking awesome. If you're ever bored, like, totally read the lore behind some of these classes, because it's insane.
Oh yeah,
And it's really cool.
Sworn to die each day to serve the realm. As each day dawns, each arisen takes their own life. Like, what? and then instantly rise again. Due to their sacrifice, they are the most powerful of the scouts, appearing black as moonless night.
This could create some really fun RP. You get into a battle, and it's like, okay, we've got the ritual before the battle. We're gonna take that keep. All right, where's our arisen? Somebody kill that fucker over there. All right, now we can go take the keep. He's died.
Stop. Like, Bobo.
I'm just, Trev, if you just like put a piece of paper over your screen in that section, you'll be fine.
So
who remembers the movie The Life of Brian? Did anybody? Nobody?
No.
Okay. At the very end of the movie, they go to rescue Brian, who's being crucified, and they are, we are the Suicide Squad, and they all run up, and then they all open their door in their armor, and they go, ha ha, and all fall over. That's what I imagine the Arisen getting ready for combat. Everybody, are we ready? Shake.
That's awesome. So yeah, speaking of killing yourself and stabbing yourself, right? We don't know how rezzing is going to officially work in Camelot Unchained.
I'm going to drop a boulder on you. That's going to res you. If I can throw rocks on you to heal you, I'm going to drop a boulder on you to res you. Come
Stone
on.
healer, man, makes perfect sense, right?
Meteor smash.
It's the dumbest way to heal.
So I know obviously the healers are going to have a res, but do you think giving the devout some kind of res could make them maybe even more tangible or more desirable?
Hell yeah.
The other way around. Maybe the healers don't have a res, and maybe that's the value of the devout.
Oh.
Or a sacrificial res. They have to run in and sacrifice themselves to give life back to whomever it is there, and then odd mechanics.
Or they may have a mass res.
Yeah.
A delayed res. Like they may like be able to put it like the necromancer.
Not in CU.
No, from World of Warcraft. The one that you could put the soul gem on somebody, and for the next 30 minutes, if they die, they would.
I thought that was a warlock, right?
Yeah, warlock. That's it. Warlock. Yes, it's like a necromancer, but no, it's cool.
Essentially
more demony, less undeady.
You guys think there'll be a combat res? I mean, every game's got some kind of combat res.
I definitely hope that all of their reses are combat reses.
Really?
I could see the healer having a very like powerful res, say combat res, but maybe the hybrids or the devouts would have maybe not a combat res or just something a little bit weaker, that makes them different, but still gives them something useful that nobody else really has besides a healer. Bobo, I know you had
long cooldown instant res.
I mean, I liked what Clarit's had, the ability to bring you back at complete 100%. That was an awesome res. My little fry. I mean, I could heal like the best of them, but when it came to rezzing as a friar, it was like, hey, here you go. Here's 10%.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hope there's a healer there to heal you.
Right. I just blew all of my resource on getting your ass up off the ground. Here's 10%. Oh, you want me to heal you now? Get out there.
Just get one shot.
Just go.
Give me your money. Show me your money.
Bobo, so I know you had some a pretty cool mechanic that you wanted to talk about, and I think it's so go ahead and shoot it out there. I think this is really cool.
Yeah, so I thought there would be like 4 main aspects that could be how could rezzing could work in CU. So the first one, I'll just use my document here so I don't forget anything. So basically, the first of the four item would be to have that each healer or each class that can res would have some sort of resurrection pool.
Mhm.
So before you can
is this
actually
like a resource?
yeah, it would be something. Well, I'm just going to explain it. So if there's question afterwards, then it's going to be
Sorry.
easier. No, that's okay.
Caleb, shut up.
So basically, you when you enter a combat, you could not res someone just by entering the combat. It's not a skill that would be active all the time. So you would basically have to heal a certain amount of hit points before you can actually fill your resurrection pool. So let's say that once you heal your group or anyone else, once you heal for, it's basically like numbers up there, 5,000 hit points that you heal, then you can res one person. So you would have to build up
So
some
charging up your
Yeah,
res
charging,
meter,
yeah,
basically.
exactly.
And then, oh, look, now I can res. Boom, and now it's down, and I got to heal more. So actually, it kind of almost at the end of a fight, it becomes harder because there's less targets to heal. It's kind of interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. So the thing that it would two of the aspects that how it could affect the game, that it would affect the game, is that first of all, it also helps in the realm imbalances sometimes. So basically, if you're a healer that always needs to heal and res, then you'll be better at healing. You'll be better at resing eventually.
So
Because
basically,
you would be able-
the more time you res people, you're kind of making it stronger, is what you're saying, right?
It's also the fact that if you heal a lot, it's basically that you have more chances of dying. So you're gonna be able to res according to your weaknesses. So if you're always in a situation that you have to heal and heal and heal, so you're probably the underdog. So you will be able to res more because you're going to be able to charge your resurrection thing faster.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's one point that would help. In not a big thing, like MJ said. Fixing the imbalances between realms is not one or two big things. It's many, many things that cumulated can help the underdog realm. So that's one of the thing that how res could work. After that, since we know that every class will be able to customize all their spells or their skills and how they will play, then rezzing should not only be one spell but a spell line or a skill tree. So you could personalize how you're going to res people. So I don't know if you get me so far. So
sorry, I don't have res. I only have reincarnation. Poof, your butterfly.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
You're a cow, and I'm about to launch you over that wall.
So yeah, personalizing your res skills could be pretty awesome. So you might be wondering how you could personalize res skills, right? Right?
Yes, of course, Bobo, of course.
Oh,
right?
that was a call and react. Sorry.
Oh, I wish you were still going. Yeah, no.
So curious. Tell me.
Thank you for helping me there.
Wolf, yes, there'll be corpse chuckers in the game, Wolf, where you can literally like take animals and stuff that have died around, put them in the corpse chucker, and then chuck them over siege walls and whatnot.
And I think you can chuck like diseased cows over the wall, so that you can poison everybody at the same time.
And we're hoping we can chuck Skippy's corpse over the wall too. That was something that we're doing
it.
We're doing it.
Become a chucker joke, you know, like how many cows could a corpse chucker chuck at the corpse chucker?
So basically, what are the most annoying thing that you could see for rezzers in Dark Age or whatever games? Were there things that annoyed you? Cast time
and consumption of how much like mana or resources.
Okay.
I'd say.
Okay. Mallet, Zedin.
I would say something that you could really that would be really weird would be location.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah.
So like,
'Cause-
where they actually res is what you're
Right? Do
saying.
they res there or do they res at your feet?
Yeah.
Or
Exactly.
is it random? You could make it so it's like random.
Oh.
It appears anywhere within 30 meters of you.
Zaylen?
The most annoying thing for rezzing?
Yep.
It's gotta be length of time and resource.
Okay. Perfect. So I thought of about 10 to 15 points where you could specialize your res skill line. So the first one would be the distance from where you can res someone. Could you res a body that is 10 feet away or 100 feet away? Time to cast is also one main factor, of course. The amount of hit points, the amount of blood or endurance that the dead player gets once he's resed. So do you res at 10% hit points, at 50, at 100?
So
those
Bobo,
are all factors that. Yes,
these would be all things that you could specifically spec in while you're leveling and things like that,
Yeah,
right? So
exactly.
you can customize your res in a sense.
Yeah, I'll give at the end. I'll give a small example. So there's also one thing that you guys mentioned: the powers you need, the amount of power or mana or magic or whatever, that you need to actually res someone. It could be you could have. Once you get better at rezzing, this could be one thing that gets less consuming in your resources.
Screwed over friars all the time.
Yeah. One other thing that you could have also is the earlier I said that you would have to charge your bar to be able to res someone. But what if you could have many bars like that? So you're in combat and you heal. So you've managed to fill one bar by charging.
I can now res 12 people. Yeah.
Yeah, you feel a second one, then
Mass
you feel a third
res.
one. Everything goes well, but eventually something goes on and your people start dying. But so if you increase your level in that part, then you'll be able to res more people faster. So that's also one thing.
So I've kind of thought out my reincarnation idea.
Okay,
Just to add to your pool of things.
go for it.
Imagine it costs very little power, but you could turn them into a sheep. So the corpse becomes a sheep and it wanders around for like 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and then it turns into the guy. But someone could run over and kill the sheep in the meantime. So you're like vulnerable as a sheep. You can try to wander away as a sheep, but you're a sheep.
Yeah,
Can I take the wool as a resource?
Totally can. That's what the crafters are there for.
It would be like a really cheap res. Like it
Totally changes the loot table. If you turn him into a cow, I get leather. It's enchanted leather because you've turned him into a human.
Without wandering down that weird path, I'm reflecting at literally what Bobo was talking about. Though is adding a flaw to a res to get another bonus. So that, like in my example, it would be a cheap res, but it has the flaw.
Yeah, but those could be in the banes, in the boons and banes.
Right.
Or it could also be like because you're gonna be able to do critical success, but we're gonna be also have critical failures. So what if on a critical failure you would raise someone as a sheep? I mean, as stupid as it is, it could happen. It would be something that it doesn't happen often, but it could be quite hilarious when it does.
Or it could be like an enemy, like a zombie. So like you res a zombie, that's an actual enemy. So you just wasted your res on like a zombie. And you know what I mean? Like that would be crazy. I just thought of that.
Yeah. So other points you could also level your rezzing skills is the amount of disruption that you can take on while you're trying to res someone. So because we know that disruption is going to be a big thing in CU. So you could be able to res the amount of disruption you need that you can take before actually rezzing someone or casting a spell. So that's one thing.
So guys, and Bobo, don't mean to interrupt, but if you guys have anything that's coming to your brains, just go ahead and throw them out there.
Exactly.
Oh, I got some.
You have a brain?
Yeah, you see, I love how just brainstorming like that can just like bring other people's ideas just by thinking from a different approach.
Let me throw this out.
Okay.
You don't die. You get to a state where you become utterly useless. You are still a targetable entity on the battlefield. So the more people that you kill, the harder it is to then find targets that are actually doing damage, that are actually participating in the battle. But if you have, quote-unquote, lost all your hit points, since this is an island of, quote, eternal life, there is no death per se. You're just down to a state where you can walk up with your sword and hit something, and you cause absolutely no damage. What your healers then have to do, or maybe your hybrid off-healers, can heal you back up. Now, once you've been healed back up, then you start doing damage again. This could balance out a battle if you've got thousands of people rushing in and you've got a bigger force over here. The more targets you have, if some of them are benign, that's going to create a lot more focused and a lot more intentional targeting and stuff like that, but then you remove the need for rezzing, and maybe they have to stay at that state for a certain amount of time, or it takes X amount of healing based on how much damage they've gone over or something of that sort. But there's no death per se. You're still participating in the battle. You're just a targetable object that's more of a nuisance than anything else.
So that kind of reminds me of like Guild Wars 2 and like the down state. So when you basically technically die, you go to a down state where you have a limited number of abilities and you can cast those abilities until somebody finishes you or finishes your pool of health.
Right, but if I can still run around and look like, you know, if I've got a Zerg coming in, they're just going to tab target and just go, and they're not paying attention to much. So if I'm running around and I'm like have no hit points, I'm not doing any damage to you, but you're not paying attention, you could be blowing all of your stuff on me, and well, that was a waste. Meanwhile, my teammates have had the opportunity, even though they're down a man, to then take over because your attention is elsewhere.
Well, that's why you also add reses to classes that aren't healer types. Look at the Dreadcaller, for example. The Dreadcaller could be, in fact, turn you into a playable zombie. All you can do is run. Maybe you have you can explode if you have an explode ability or something like that, or and a slap, and so you can like wander at people going, and then maybe explode and do some damage or something like that. They could use that as a res. You know, it's resurrecting you, but it's not a full res. It's you just.
Well, my point is like get rid of the idea of a res. Like there's no death per se. You're just constantly healing, so you have to heal a person back up, and maybe there's a threshold you have to heal them up to where they can become viable in the offensive part of the battle. You know, once they get to 0 hit points or whatever, then they just become a defensive nature of the battle, being an extra target that's benign.
So, I mean, do you guys like the concept of res, or would you want to see something different? Because
Hako doesn't like it.
Fine. Yeah, I think when they say that we won't die, basically, I don't think it's not that we're not going to die, but we're immortal. And I think that's where lies the difference. So we're going to, our body is going to, at some point, be useless and fall on the ground. But since we can come back to life, that's how I think Jay is mentioning that we
if
won't
I kill
die.
you, I want you dead.
You're kicking the spirit out of the body that gets lost in the veil for a while and has to then eventually reform elsewhere.
Narth, that was Narth's idea.
Yeah, but I thought it could happen this way at some point, but since the veil technically won't be there at launch, I don't want to go into much detail on how the death and rezzing could work with the veil, because it then would have to change a lot between the launch and the time the veil is going to appear.
That'd be fun. Everybody dies in a battle, and if you've got an impending veil storm that you can see forming and whatnot, as soon as the veil storm hits, everybody that is alive gets killed, and everybody that is dead that's in the veil gets brought back.
That's nuts, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's nuts.
WoW. You look at WoW and you got kicked to a graveyard and you're a ghost. And now you had to wander your ghost through
For
Ghosty
7
Land.
frickin' minutes back into Molten Core.
But I mean, it's like the concept is not unusual or anything like that as a role play method of how you bind the spirit to the body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like Seihaku's thing where it's like if you've got a healing class or a resin class that has the ability to enter the veil, and you have to find the lost soul in order to bring them back.
Yeah, that's
so it
pretty badass.
completely and 100% takes you out of the battle to go look for your fallen comrade to then bring them back.
I mean, usually long cast times simulate that.
Well, this would be
They
so much
do,
cooler.
but it's
This would be
more.
so much cooler.
But if you think about it, like when you break down abilities and things like that, I mean, if you really break it down, everybody's kind of doing the same thing. It's just how creative you get with doing the same thing. to
Yeah,
make it a
either I
little
stand there
different.
for 5 seconds doing this. Okay, you're up. Or I actually go and do something, you know.
Exactly.
No,
So-
I guess it's not. I don't think I think we're all comfortable with the idea in general of res. I think the phrase that we really need to be considered is: do we want combat res?
I think combat res is must be there. But once again, if we use like charging, the fact that you have to charge your ability to use it, it then limits the amount of res you can make in the combat. So that is very important.
I like Bobo's idea of charging the res, but apply that to the idea of a combat res. So give everybody that can res the ability to combat res, but that combat res is something that you have to work toward, that you have to build up, that you have to earn, whatever you want to call it.
Whatever mechanic it is.
Otherwise, you can res like normal at a battle without any,
Right.
Just your normal who's a what's thingamajig.
Yeah. So
Dark
also,
Camelot allowed infinite rezzing in combat, but I also felt that and I think that CU will fall into this category of it's about punishing them when they have to release.
Yes.
If they have to take a long time to get back there, having infinite combat reses isn't a bad It's important actually to keep the fight rolling, but it's all about dominating enough that there's no chance to res.
Yeah, and also there's one thing that's important. Man, Jay also mentioned that the longer a fight is going to last, some classes are going to do more and more damage, like the casters, because eventually they don't want a battle to last forever. So the longer it lasts, some casters will do more and more damage. So at one point, even if you have to charge your rezzing ability, at one point you won't be able to outgrow the amount of damage the casters can do.
So you're going to put your damage dealers on steroids and neuter your healers, just so that a battle doesn't go on for hours or days. Honestly, I'd rather have a couple of day-long battle. That would be bloody epic.
Yeah, but at some point, I think it needs to end. But yeah, who knows?
I mean, I think res needs some kind of limitation in a sense. And I kind of agree that if you're gonna res, you need to make a decision to res, and it's either gonna bite you in the ass or it's really gonna work out for you.
Yeah, and if you control, sorry, keep going.
No. It's that was it. Like it just basically.
Trev brings up a thing here. In the game, there are some skills that will need / require an item to use, much like the combat res did for certain classes. And wow, I hated that, by the way. Oh, do you have enough onks in your bag? Do you have enough this to cast that? Do you have it? No, that's just another fucking resource that I have to deal with. Run out of that, you can't use it, so perhaps there is a rune that only allows use once per 10 minutes for a combat res. And then there's a res.
I'm going to disappoint you there, Zaylen, because I'm pretty sure that since soul shards are going to be a thing, that soul shards are going to be required to res someone.
That's just another resource.
No. It's another resource, but it's a resource collected by everybody that can be bought at the auction house.
Exactly.
That is collected through PvP, and therefore killing people and stealing soul shards has crafting value, but now you're going to take crafting value and you're going to use it to burn to res people.
So I mean, I think it's going to be very well balanced also. I'm not scared on that point, but I think that the amount. I think that soul shards are going to be required to res someone, but eventually it's something that once again that you could level up, so you would need less and less soul shards to res someone.
So if you go down that path of because Camelot Unchained, let's face it, it's all about what they're saying is it's all about choosing. And that's what kind of, in a sense, helps balance is if you choose to do if you choose more damage versus survivability, you're going to be able to kill somebody quicker, but you're also going to die quicker.
Yep.
So always giving us that choice, I think, is perfect for res. Giving people a choice to how their res works, I think works out perfectly with their system. And it fits with their game so well.
Honestly, I mean, I thought about it a lot, but from another point of view, it's basically the only way to go. Because since all the other classes are going to be able to really personalize their own skills, why wouldn't it be the same for rezzing? So it has to be like this. Maybe not on the same points that I mentioned, maybe on more, maybe on less, maybe on different.
Mm-hmm.
But it could be a thing that it could also, I even thought that it could be, if you're a level 1 healer, so you would basically have your level 1 rezzing skill. So at first you could possibly only be able to res one race or one class. So eventually you could raise up, you could select the number, the different classes or races that you could res also. I'm not saying that it is,
So
but
that's dangerous.
I mean, yeah, but it could be like the difference between the pure healer or the devouts.
Yeah, but
So
then
the pure healer could res according to
you're going to have to stick it to number of people, because otherwise, if you choose the wrong thing, there are some groups that you'll never be able to get into. It's like, oh, can you res this race, or can you res this class? No, I can't res that one yet. Okay, we don't want you.
Yeah, it's true. But that's why that point and the amount of soul shards are in my second line, second batch of options that you could res.
If you're going to do soul shards, do it in such a way where I kill you. If you get rezzed before I can get to your body to take your soul shard, then I don't have a soul shard. But if I take your soul shard after I've killed you, then you have to release. There is no chance to res you at that point, because your soul shard is taken.
I like that.
That would be like the unconscious state or whatever.
Make it a difficult resource to attain, but yet in some instances it should be relatively easy. So larger battles, it might be a little bit more difficult, because if I kill you from afar, the chances of me getting to you to take that soul shard are small, which gives the opposite team the ability to then pick you up and get you back into the fight. But in a small skirmish, those you want, pretty much done pretty quick. So if I run up, kill you, take your soul shard, boom, you're gone. There's no chance to get you back up at that point, unless you're just an idiot and don't take the soul shard. And we don't know how long looting is going to take. Malice is falling asleep.
So there's two last points, last two options that how we could increase the level, personalize the rezzing. So one of them would be a damage shield that you give to your rezzed person. So you could give them a damage shield that lasts a few seconds, but the more you put points in it, the higher the damage shield could be stronger and last longer. So it would be one other thing, or even two components that you could personalize. And the last thing was, like Malice said earlier, the place where you can have the body get back to life once you res it. So is it next to you, where he's at, 20 feet behind you, a precise location? It could be a bit harder to code, obviously, but it's something that could be a nice addition also.
So I like what and I'm sorry for your name, Sahaku. He's saying, could there be ability to prevent res?
I think, I'm pretty sure on this channel we've had conversations before about the idea of, oh look, a fireball's coming. Okay, I'm like the anti-mage class. I can either take that fireball, absorb it, or redirect it somewhere else. If you do the same sort of thing with a res, I can take that res spell and go, no, you're not going to res that person. I'm going to redirect it to my healer, so now their res pool or whatever resource that they've got for rezzing, if we go down that route, I've just helped them fill that up.
Yeah. So it's basically part of the classes I suggested a month ago. When I call them the elementalist, that you could like absorb energy or disrupt it or send it somewhere else. So yeah, it could be an option.
That's
But
what the
also,
hybrid classes do right there.
Boom.
but also, I mean,
Boom.
since the devout and healers classes are basically like class that not promotes life, but I mean they're toward life. There could eventually be a class that is more toward death. So they could be. It could be a class that could help people preventing res.
The anti-res.
Yeah.
I think that a Hellbound is perfect for that because they have a life and death
Absolutely.
path.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And actually, following your kind of charge idea, based on which side you're charged, whether you're charged for death or you're charged for life, is
Exactly.
when your anti-res is active or your res is active.
I want a kamikaze class where I can just run in, explode myself, and if I manage to kill myself, then anybody that has equal hit points to me or lower dies as well.
Yep. So one last thing.
Every game has that. I don't know. Like,
You can just walk in and basically just go boom.
have you seen videos of people spamming in Hibernia back in Dark Age, where they would literally just make a blinking ball around themselves and go, and everything would die? Yeah,
But you
pretty
die
much-
as well. That's the key.
But yeah, I was gonna say you wouldn't die unless somebody.
I mean,
got
you
a shot off
usually
you.
died too because of enough
everyone
people were
was
shooting
hitting
at you at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. So well, guys. Any last thoughts on the devouts or rezzing? I mean, overall, I personally think that the
I feel
healers
we really
should have-
haven't talked about the devout, like specifically.
Well,
We just talked about the
Hey.
hybrid.
I'm sorry, the hybrid, because the devout is technically a hybrid, and the devout is supposed to be a mage hybrid, and they're probably going to bring in more hybrids down
Yeah.
the line.
Well, if they want more classes, eventually they cannot be like only one spec. So there has to be more hybrids.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had like three little things more that I thought about. Like there could be a possible synergy between healers, so they could use the same resurrection thing that you can charge. So you could connect like two healers, so they charge the same resurrection pool. So it could allow people to rest faster. And since MJ likes the divine interventions and the death curse, I just thought of one of each that could be funny. So divine intervention, when you die and you launch your divine intervention, it could instantly res multiple people at full health, mana, and stamina, or whatever other resources. So that could be a divine intervention. And a death curse. So when you die, everyone that you resed die also. So only two little things like that. Yep.
No, Boba. So I think those are a lot of good points to, and I brought up res to kind of give the devout something that's unique. Now I know a lot of these devout classes, are the archetype is going to be unique in their own way for the realm, but I know there's always that stigma where, like we said before, where some groups are like, well, why would I take a hybrid, right? Or I'll just take a pure DPS and a pure healer, right? And I guess overall, what I want for Camelot Unchained is for these devout classes or the devout archetype to really bring something to the party that everyone's like, hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah, this is what we want. Like, this is exactly what we need for a party to excel.
Yeah.
Considering half my guild is pretty much like, I'm playing devout. Like, you'll find out what a Zerg of devout apparently looks like, because we're the Hellbound are just gonna come charging with their little staves and life and death all day.
So Zayla, you have something to add? No.
No, sir.
Okay. So earlier I said I would give a quick example on how the leveling leveling the res skill could work. So eventually, if at first it takes you 10 seconds to cast one res skill, one res, and your res person gets back up usually with 10% of each of his resources. So you could eventually have a spell that lasts, that casts to 4 or 5 seconds, even like 3 seconds, and have all the other aspects customized. But also between the devout and the pure healer, there would be the maximum points that you could use in your res skill could be lowered as a devout, not the same as high as the healers, basically. So they would not be like totally the same either, and maybe even remove some of the options. So maybe like for the devout, only put the time to cast, the amount of HPs, or some of them, not all of them. So that could be a way to put them non-mirrored and different from the pure healers.
Absolutely, man. So, without everything being said, Camelot Unchained is coming out with a reveal stream again pretty soon, probably within like the month or so. And it's going to go over everything that this devout class is all about. And I recommend everybody jump on board when this comes out. Ask all the questions that you could possibly ask. And essentially what I'm going to do is do a video on this. I'll put it up on Smart Gamer Network here, and you guys will be able to catch up. I'll throw some questions in there, and we'll go over some abilities, maybe some builds. So if it's going to be anything like the mage stream that they did, they give a ton of information, more than the website could ever possibly give you guys. So with all that being said, I think Zaylin and Mouse, you guys have some announcements that SGN is going to be doing in the near future with some shows.
This coming Tuesday, April 7, MMO Grind.
This Tuesday?
This coming Tuesday.
This Tuesday.
This one.
This Tuesday. Am I going to have to do some research now?
Malice has a special guest that he's worked very hard to bring on. Malice.
I have a friend of mine who works for Blizzard Online Entertainment.
Blizzard?
Diablo 4. She is one of their artists, and she is going to come to the show and discuss art and art in the gaming industry, and a little bit about the things she does. She mostly does character rigging, which is she builds the bones and the motion for character models in games.
So come check it out. Bring a friend. Get as many people on there to support and make this person that does hard work for games that you love feel important and that they are loved, because they are. Then we have Saturday, April 11, episode 2 of Exploring the New World will come out. If you have any interest at all in Amazon's new MMO New World, there'll be a new video that will be hitting Saturday morning from the Smart Gamer Network, and that one will talk about the faction system that is put into the game and how that very neatly ties together PvP and PvE within the game.
PvP.
So look for that. Again, not a stream.
So are we gonna do an episode in beta where we run around and duel people, kick people's ass all day?
Sure.
Yes, Mouse. I will kill you, without a doubt. I'll kill you.
Right. If you're a different faction. Anyway, Sunday, April 12th, Town Hall, talking about. Sorry, Bobo's typing questions up. April 12th, talking about social anxiety in gaming, which I know a lot of people have. Strangely enough, this has all kind of come up in the past couple of weeks, and it seems to be a very, very hot topic for a lot of people and very sensitive one. So we will see the return of Zeb on the stream for Town Hall, and that's Sunday. Be there. And these are pretty much all at 10 p.m. Eastern, except the video on YouTube will hit in the morning.
Oh. All right. Thanks, guys, for everybody joining, giving your input. Appreciate it. Everybody stay safe and have a good weekend.
Yep. Have a good night, folks.
Thank you. See you guys.